Hello, everyone. So as you no doubt all know, Hunt Down the Freeman is next. It kind of took the world by surprise. It didn't really take me by surprise. I've been looking forward to it since at least December. I was kind of sad with the delays, and I thought the game looked like shit. When I think a game is going to be shit, I get kind of excited, but I'm also like, I kind of hope they deliver and actually make a good game. So that'd be a pleasant surprise. But this this went over my expectations for it being bad, and I'm very excited yet kind of daunted to talk about it because it's a game that a lot of other people are going to be talking about, and well, I kind of hope to have something of a unique angle. But that's for later. For now, right now, this is the afterthought for Danganronpa and Ace Attorney. I am drinking wine from a bottle on a Saturday night, so I'm living large. Sorry, I'm not going to be doing that a lot during this. This one took a while. I kind of fell behind over the last little while. February had some good and some not bad, but just kind of dull things that happened. I started working kind of freelance basis with an advertising company in February. I do video game capture for them, so my YouTube channel actually landed me a job in a way. I get paid pretty decently on a daily rate. But it's a day rate, and they gave me a job they estimated would take 2 weeks, and I did it in 4 days. So I more than cut my pay in half from what they estimated. And also, unlike most people they hire who've done this role in the past, they say most people just turn up, they start playing the game, and they just record hours and hours of footage, and that gets handed to an editor, and the editor has to kind of like suffer through all of it to find the useful stuff, whereas I came in, I only captured chunks, and all of my footage was logged. Like I do for my video game reviews, I wrote down notes for everything I did, because I didn't do that. I think on The Sims I didn't have any notes, and going through that footage was fucking hell because of that. So even on as early as Postal 2, I had notes on what I was doing. So, not to mention, I've come from a background in doing film, kind of. Like, I did it at university. I wanted to be in film from a young age. Less so nowadays. I don't know what I want nowadays. Still kind of film, but more writing rather than filming and such. But kind of, I get that point, and I get why it's very important to log stuff. And they liked me, so I actually do have 2 more projects in March they might be bringing me on, for which I hope they do, because it pays well, and it's a fun job. I'm getting paid to do what I like doing anyway. But February, also, ironically enough, had jury duty. Which is over now, thankfully, thanks to the fact it's fucking snowing in England, like mental. I might just intersperse some pictures I took out in the snow on my phone, because, yeah, it's snowing, and England doesn't do snow well. We do snow terribly. So, what did jury duty teach me, tell me, especially because I did 2 games about trials. Not much. When I first learned I was doing jury duty, I brought it up in a Discord chat I'm in, and the fellows immediately said to me, "Hey, do you want to know how to get out of it?" And I said, "No, I want to know." And then they said, and I'm paraphrasing, "Look, it isn't like video games or the movies, it's boring." And no shit. I didn't expect it to be fun. I expected it to be slow and tedious and mostly meandering. I didn't think it would, actually be the prosecution and the defense at each other's throats, constantly throwing evidence and tiny holes back at each other in the most thrilling case of the century. And it wasn't that. And I didn't expect it to be that. I didn't expect to walk out of a trial with a perfect timeline of events and a confession that legally I'd never be allowed to talk about, even though I'd immediately want to go and talk about it. No, I got, for me it was 4 days of sitting in a waiting room. During which time I just drank coffee and wrote a screenplay, but 4 days in a waiting room. You know what? I'm a very patient person, so it wasn't hell for me, but it was me thinking, especially with the precursors, the deadline of February, I want to get a video done each month. That was kind of hellish, but I feel I got enough done in that time. One thing I knew ahead of time, but didn't quite think about, is that as a jury, you need a unanimous vote. A jury is 12 people. You need 12 people to agree on something, and the one trial I was on lasted 3 days. The prosecution was a very, very long-winded fellow, let's say. The defense was shit, and that's all I think I'm as far as I can go with details. And then we got 12 people in a room, and everyone arguing over the definition of can we agree? And It was 11-12 for a while, and that was it. It was a slow time. It took a while to convince the 12th person to go over the rest. Jury Duty didn't really change my perspective on either series. In fiction, it's so alien from the real process that, I mean, I know it's based on it, but all media and fiction trims fat where it needs to make an entertaining experience. Like, I didn't think it would be anything like that, and it isn't. And if you do get Jury Duty, you can't really weasel out of it. In England, anyway. I can't speak for America, though I think it's pretty much the same. You couldn't wiggle out of it. And I don't regret doing it. I'm glad I did it. Would I do it again if asked? I mean, in England, if you get called up again within 2 years, you can deny it, and I probably would. But I would, if 3 years from now I get called up again, I wouldn't be sad about it, per se. There are elements of it I dislike, like the fact that I nearly got put on a jury that was going to take over a month, and once you're on, you ain't going nowhere. But, I avoided that. So I said, yeah, I'll do it again, because I got the light version, so there we go, I'm a coward and a hypocrite who's saying I'd do something when I didn't really want to. So let's move on to the questions, because I guess the only, like, other Afterthought thing that doesn't really come up is, music. Which, music-wise, I really like the music of both series. Danganronpa in particular, I love it. But for the video, I used orchestral remixes. And I thought on that decision for a good while. Like, do I go with the original? Because the originals were Game Boy Advance games, but the most well-known versions of all the music are the DS updates, which are a lot less tinny and, you know, Game Boy Advance. And I'm not a musical expert, but I do know that if you play Danganronpa's music and then hard cut to the far more beat-boopy DS Ace Attorney soundtrack, it would be distracting and weird, and it would make... I don't think it would make it look bad by itself, but it would make most people just kind of see an immediate distinction. So I went with orchestral and jazz remixes, and a lot of my favourite tracks from the series do not get these treatments. Here's the thing, I like that beat-boopy Ace Attorney DS soundtrack. I love it. I've listened to a lot of those tracks over and over again, and I've not re-listened to the orchestral or jazzy remixes half as much. I don't like them as much, but for the purposes of that video, I think it was better to be consistent in terms of, you know, quality? I don't know if quality would be the right word. You know, instrumentation, maybe. You know, the Danganronpa soundtrack didn't sound like a video game, so the Ace Attorney one shouldn't sound like you would imagine a video game too. So I'm going to move on to questions. And the first one is from Roomba-san. In which series did you feel In which series did the stakes feel higher while playing? Which series had great attention? Generally Danganronpa. Ace Attorney's original trilogy only really reached insanely high stakes once, and they were more personal high stakes, not, you know, the whole world's in danger high stakes. A lot of Ace Attorney cases, you know, if Phoenix lost, he'd be crushed, but, well, if Makoto lost, he would quite literally be crushed. I did have moments of being really tense in a Phoenix Wright game, but with the setting and knowledge that the threat of death isn't really as much of an issue, I never got that sort of narrative tension. Meanwhile, Danganronpa is about, you know, big themes of hope versus despair. There's larger goings-on in the outside world that's always related to the death game at hand. And, you know, lives are on the line, and it's the characters' lives being at stake that drives the death game and makes people kill each other. And choosing the wrong person in a trial is a death sentence. Also, this is a strange thing to talk about, but I always felt time was incredibly flexible in Danganronpa, which is ironic. Because, unless there's a line I missed, it always felt like trials go on exactly as long as the students needed. There is an in-game time limit, but fucking Monokuma better learn that he always gets kids who test every possibility and break when pressured enough. So, you know, they always just get on to the confession. They never make a wrong guess, because they have all the time in the world to get someone to go, ah, you did it, didn't you? And they go, yeah, you got me. They might sound much less happy about it than I just did, but, you know. Phoenix Wright, meanwhile, has a really big time limit, but it felt more imposing. You know, in the Phoenix Wright universe, you have 3 days of court trials to get your verdict, but that's a hard limit. And the judge has to call regular recesses, and, you know, he regularly ends the day so that the prosecution and defense can go digging for further evidence. Because, often days in Phoenix Wright would end when Phoenix or someone else, you know, brought something to light in the case that no evidence could explain, so the judge would have to go, oh, okay, go and explain that, and then come back. While I say all of this, the stakes are higher in Danganronpa, undoubtedly, but you asked feel, and I felt the stakes more in Phoenix Wright. I cared a lot for the characters in Danganronpa, but I got ripped out of the story a lot more in Danganronpa, particularly in 2 and 3, because I didn't bring it up in the video itself, but fuck me, the mascot characters are grating. Sod the Monokuma kids. I think the first game is the only one to break the tension with levity all that well. And that's because Monokuma is both teasing and kind of funny, yet is always threatening and menacing, and he never manages to quite pull that off in 2 and 3, I feel. Skeleton. Which series has the better spin-offs? This feels really unfair to say because I haven't played any of the Ace Attorney spin-offs. My answer is Ace Attorney. The investigation series it looks like an Ace Attorney game. You know, even if it's more focused on the investigation segments rather than the trials, but you know, you still gather evidence and put it to people to solve mysteries. And you know, it also has an anime adaptation, but we'll get into that with further questions. The Danganronpa spin-off game, Ultra Despair Girls, is very strange. It's a third-person survival horror shooter starring Nagito's sister, Komaida? By the way, I haven't looked up names ahead of time for this, and I'm very bad with Japanese names, and there's a lot of characters in this series. But anyway, she basically has the same issues that Nagito does. Fucking Nagito? That's a different character altogether, see what I mean? Basically has the same issues that Makoto does. He feels average. She feels average. She identifies as an incredibly average person, which is a very strange Japanese character tick to just go, oh, I'm the most average person in the world, and I love it. But I also hate it. Ultra Despair Girl is a great title, by the way. My favourite part about Ultra Despair Girls is the music and the titles. Because it's just a silly name. But the story of it is, she's kidnapped when despair breaks out. She's put in a room for a year, and then she's freed by the Freedom Foundation, led by a character from Danganronpa 1. And she has to flee through a city filled with robot Monokumas. It's a bit redundant. Filled with Monokumas and murderous children. And then Toko joins her. And I'll say one of the better things the game does is in its character writing between these two. It's still kind of generic anime, getting over my troubles stuff. But it gives Toko the character development that she probably should have had in Danganronpa and makes her likable. It makes her get over herself. And gameplay-wise, if you liked Resident Evil 4, it's kind of a shit version of that, but with anime girls and a really terrible final boss. And, you know, I know some people out there like anime girls, so that's really enough. The soundtrack is amazing. The main theme, Absolute Despair Girl, is infectiously catchy. And I started listening to it as I write this. I'm not listening to it now, as you can hear, because I got my speakers on. So you can't hear anything. And its stage music all takes elements from this track and merges them throughout the game. And it kind of kills the horror for me, because the stage music is all, like, really fucking jazzy, and it's Halloween-y, but it's jazzy, and it's just got samplings of man going, yeah, 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 just a lot, and I like it. I like it, but it just doesn't work as a horror because of its music. I don't think it's trying to be a horror, maybe, because of that, because Danganronpa's got a very exaggerated art style. 2. How successfully have each been adapted to other media? And here we go, anime. I do know that Danganronpa has a lot of light novels. They're actually built into the game, and I have read none of them, I'm afraid. Whenever I unlock them, I was like, oh man, I'm going to read this later on, and I never do. I know the general plot synopsis of Danganronpa 0, which is about a character who does and doesn't appear in Danganronpa 1. And to say who it is a spoiler. This video will have spoilers later on, but I'm not going to spoil that. I don't know. I've not heard anything to suggest that the light novels are worth my time. That's unfair. I can't speak for their real quality, but I like both of these series enough, but I have not ever felt the need with Danganronpa to go, I'm going to dig into every little bit of detail with these. I'm a bit drunk recording this. I've only seen one episode of the Phoenix Wright anime, so I can't really comment much on it. It was, of course, the first case of the first Ace Attorney, the Larry Butts trial. I thought it was okay. It was a fun adaptation. But here's the thing. I enjoyed Phoenix Wright for breaking the case and finding out the mystery, and I don't think it did a very good job drawing me into the mystery, but I say that as someone who had played that trial and knew the outcome and knew the twist, so I don't know. I think a lot of its charm only really works in game form. I will say, just knowing enough Japanese to know that Phoenix's Japanese name, which is Ryuichi Naruhodo, that sounds fucking ridiculous. Like, isn't Naruhodo just the way of saying, oh, I understand that, or I get it? So his name would be like fucking Ryuichi, I understand. You know, just hearing that amused me a lot throughout. I know there's a live-action movie adaptation of Phoenix Wright, and I may check that out at some point, but I haven't watched the Yakuza one yet, and I've been into Yakuza for way longer, so I mean, video game movie adaptations are always spotty, so I don't have high expectations for it. I haven't watched the anime adaptation of Danganronpa 1, and I have very little interest in doing so. I haven't heard great things, is all I can really say. I can give you a bit more of an answer in the next question, however. Question 3. How much important information is given in items other than the main games, like Danganronpa 3, anime, etc.? Now, you said etc., but I'm going to use this question just to talk about Danganronpa 3, and I apologize. Danganronpa 3 is pure dog shit. This is as close to an anime review as I'm ever going to get. It's such strange material. So I'm going to start spoiler-free and then get to it, because if you've played Danganronpa, you should still watch it. It's dog shit. Don't go in expecting anything good, but go in expecting to have fun. Okay, so Danganronpa 3 is split into 2 arcs, Side Future and Side Despair. Watch one episode of each, starting with Future, then Despair, and onwards and so forth. Future arc follows the events from Danganronpa 2, and it's framed as the final battle between Makoto and Monokuma, one final death game taking place in Future Foundation headquarters. And the gimmick of this game is, every 2 hours, everyone is knocked unconscious by a bracelet they're wearing, and the murderer gets up and kills one random person. And everyone has one random restriction. For instance, for Makoto, it's that he can't run in the halls. And for one character, and it introduces it very well, for one character, it's they cannot witness violence, which, that's deliciously cruel. And the central mysteries, of course, of this part of the arc are, how did the remnants of Despair break into the Future Foundation, who is the killer, and why is Yu Narukami in this? It's a very action-packed death game, and I hate it for that. Like, okay, Danganronpa is a very out-there series, but you don't have motherfuckers who are leaping 30 feet into the air. And, like, one of the characters is the ultimate chemist, and they've made a drug that can turn them into a feral wolf creature or some shit. Oh, by the way, on the concept of ultimates, I'm not sure, I can't remember if I brought up in the review, but the Japanese translation of that, well, the Japanese original wording of that is so much better, and I'm sorry to do this after bitching about translation in precursors, but the Japanese wording isn't ultimates, it's super high school level, which, that's a lot better. Like, I'm gonna judge the translation for doing a shoddy job, because ultimate implies they're better than all of them out in the world, whereas super high school level implies they're advanced. They have budding potential and talent that could be developed to be the best. Anyway, sorry, that's neither here nor there. I'm judging the translation doing a bad job on that one. I think the death game, while I find it a lot less interesting than the class trial game, I understand it. For an anime adaptation, it's a lot faster paced. This is a game that will take a matter of hours, not days or weeks as the video games do. With the video games, you can be in there a lot longer and have a longer timescale, whereas this, it's a very pragmatic way of handling things. So, you know, there's barely any time to investigate, it's fast and punchy, but sadly so is everyone in this death game. Fucking Sakura would have been outclassed by some of these people. Like, we've got the ultimate boxer. Like, That's always something that amused me about Danganronpa, that I get as part of the setting, but we run the most prestigious school in the country. Ultimate criminal. Yeah, we're going to bring him in, and I actually do appreciate. One of the good jokes in Danganronpa 3 is they're talking about the ultimate students, and someone says, oh, he's the ultimate Yakuza, and the other character just recoils in horror and says, that's a talent? It's like, yeah. Anyway, Side Despair. I'll open up with Side Despair. Has an opening that's way too fucking good for it. It has good imagery. I like the music. It's way too good for the piece of shit that Side Despair is. It's a prequel following the cast of Danganronpa 2 during their time at Hope's Peak, how they ended up in Danganronpa 2, and the first time I typed this sentence I spoiled something massive. So here we go. Spoilers time. It's about how they knew Junko, and how Junko and Oshima, you know, broke them and turned them into the remnants of despair. And every single reveal in this part that's meant to fill in a gap in the holes of the mysteries of Danganronpa actively makes everything stupider and less sensical. Like, the setting gets worse the more it tells you about it. One of the characters introduced in this part is the super high school level animator. And he wanted to make an anime that would be scientifically perfect for making people happy. He's the most fucking anime boy you can get. He's like, oh, I'm gonna make the world happy. You know, he's that. But Junko drives him to despair to create an anime that will drive more people to despair. And big fucking reveal for Side Future, she made an anime that would instantly make someone need to kill themselves. So the murderer of Side Despair is themselves. Side Future. Like, fuck me. So, instead of Junko being this great sociopathic social manipulator, which, by the way, I don't think they ever did very well in the games themselves where that was suggested, she instead just had a magic anime that broke people's spirits. I give Danganronpa's believability a lot of slack because I feel that one of my points with media is that I have a very strong... I can suspend my disbelief really far, but that was way too much for me. It actively harms the series' kind of believability and buy-in for me. It's such a fucking cop-out. This series is just... Danganronpa 3 is just a cop-out in so many ways. It has no bite. Like, it fakes killing big, popular characters shamelessly, and often it's like, oh, that character's dead. No, they're not. There was just ketchup on them. Oh my god, they backpedal on everything they ever do. If it's in any way... If it has any balls, they backpedal on it. If it's stupid, they keep it. And as I said, I haven't read any of the light novels. I know, like, Junko or some other crazy bitch had, like, super short-term memory problems and a boyfriend that was killed. As he was the first one to kind of buy in and believe in Junko's despair and was killed for that or something. And as for Ace Attorney Investigations, by the way, I do want to get into it. I enjoy playing as Edgeworth. He's fun. But I don't like the investigations as much as the court stuff. In the short time you get to play as Edgeworth in Trials and Tribulations, I really liked his internal monologue. I found him really funny and amusing. I felt he was really well written and he was just fun. I like the way he handled people. I like the way he handled evidence and carried himself while you played as him. So I want more of that. So I want to play investigations. I miss the courtroom, but I'll manage. DBZ King 119. How do you think Phoenix Wright would fare in the Danganronpa world? Pretty fucking well. I mean, the man's a bloodhound. Nothing gets past him. Every clue, every lie, just sussed out. I mean, it's not just, the fact that he's a good legal mind. The amount of punishment he takes means he's not going to get bumped off easy either. He gets whipped, he gets numerous mugs of burning hot coffee flung at him, he falls into a raging ice-cold river, only to come out with a 2-day cold. And he gets hit by a car, thrown down the street into a lamppost, and he just walks away, little worse for wear. He checks into a hospital and he's out in a couple of days. The man is indestructible. He'd have everything going for him. Not to mention, he's a logic monster. He'd trounce a class trial full of kids. No fucking threat. Question 2. Which series do you think had the more interesting twists? Just in terms of being interesting rather than good, Danganronpa has larger twists, and Danganronpa attempts twists that make you reevaluate the whole game, and I appreciate it for the bravado in which it does it. And I think in 1 and 3, they do succeed in making you recontextualize everything in a way that heightens the emotional impact of shit. I'm going to give away Danganronpa 1 now for the purposes of this, but in Danganronpa 1, after the dangling carrot of victory in the killing game being leaving the school, you learn that the outside is an apocalyptic wasteland and the death game is being broadcast to the survivors. People have attempted to breach the school and save the students inside, but so far all attempts have failed. That's fucking good, and it's delivered really well, and it makes all of the deaths and trials and motives that have happened so far so much crueler. I mean, I had my suspicions throughout the plot that something had to be going on in the outside world, because the plot doesn't work otherwise. Like, the police, the army, they'd bust that place open, no time flat. But it did it, and it did it well, while leaving enough red herrings and distractions along the way that I doubted my own suspicions. 2's twist is bad, but I think it's carried out well, if that makes any sense. It uses the twist to do some really interesting things that play with the ending and the format, but I don't really like the twist itself. I like how it's used, rather. The twist in 3, I actually really do like. I know some people think it's a bit too far. It takes an aspect of the twist in 1 and turns it on its head, but it's been contentious, to say the least. Phoenix Wright's twists are much more smaller scale. Like, only the really big reveals come in the last case, and even then, they're pretty small reveals compared. Wright's twists are more frequent, however. They cap off sections of each case. A new piece of evidence, a sudden truth becoming uncovered that throws all of the evidence into question. The twists are more frequent, but they're smaller. They don't make you reevaluate everything. And this isn't a bad thing. This is the kind of game that Phoenix Wright is. I expect constant small twists. And there are a good couple of heavy hitters. Ironically, Danganronpa has a problem with this. Every game has the big twist. It's part of the formula. It's part of why every dev game is different. So you kind of go into each game expecting okay, what's the big twist going to be? What's you know, admittedly, part of the fun is trying to call it. Like, Danganronpa 2 is formulaic on purpose to make you question stuff, but it's also kind of a weakness. So, anyway, I think Danganronpa has more interesting twists, but they're hit and miss to most, whereas Phoenix Wright's twists they're less daring, they're more expected, but they're better executed and serve a generally better purpose. 4. Who would make a better lawyer, Phoenix Wright or Makoto Negi? I mean, Phoenix Wright. I'm sorry, that's all I've got. Nike's skill was, you know, being the heart of the group. Phoenix Wright is a law machine. And I know in later entries he's revered as a legendary legal figure, so that's really all I've got there. 5. What was your favourite trial from each series? Okay, spoilers ahead, because I'm going to explain a little bit of why. For Danganronpa, it's from Danganronpa 2, Chapter 5, Smile at Hope in the Name of Despair. For Phoenix Wright, it's from Justice for All, Farewell, My Turnabout. These feel like really safe answers, since both of them, I think, are generally considered very, very good cases within their series, and both of them turn the formula on their head in some way. Danganronpa's trial has a reveal that is one of the most interesting questions in the killing game. What if there was no reasonable way to work out who the killer is? You know how in firing squads one person had a blank, so everyone could conceivably believe that they weren't the one who landed the killer shot? That's the situation the victim forces everybody into. Inverted, of course. No one knows who really did the killing. And in a death game, that technicality matters a lot, since Monokuma knows who did the killing, but the killer doesn't. And Monokuma cares about that. Monokuma will kill everyone for getting that wrong, even if they have no reasonable way to prove it. The way it answers that question, you know, it's a bit weird, but it's something that works in the context, in the moment, but if you just looked at it in a vacuum, it would seem like a cop-out. Even with its context, it can seem like a bit of a cop-out answer, but I think it works. Phoenix Wright's case, meanwhile, has the twist that for the first time in the series, Phoenix knows that his client is guilty. But that client has leverage, and Phoenix has to pull some real bullshit under both the client and the court's nose to get out from under him, and make sure that no one else really knows what's going on. And it's happening right in front of them. And besides that, it is one of the longest and most intricate cases in the series, with really, really high personal stakes, and it's really good. Fucking talking about twists, this case pulls some fucking twists. Sentry Down. Have you played any other Ace Attorney games, and what did you think of them? So far, only a tiny amount of Apollo. I like what I've played so far, and I'll definitely continue. Obviously, I don't care for Apollo as much as Phoenix, and my first impression of him was weaker, but I understand why I would want to play as a new lawyer. A big part of my enjoyment of, Phoenix Wright was getting introduced into this world and playing as a green defense attorney. So it works as a new character. I think his design is... I don't like it as much as Phoenix. He looks a lot more, like, naive and innocent, but that's kind of the point. He is a lot more naive and innocent. At least I believe that's what they're going with, because he just comes off that way just immediately. He's a lot more childlike and, yeah. I can't say it doesn't work. The game's prosecutor hasn't won me over yet, but as I said, still very early on in the game. Time will tell on that. I did like the tutorial case a lot, where you're protecting Phoenix. That was a fun case. 2. I know that other Ace Attorney games include some more gimmicks to spice up their regular gameplay. Brackets, I haven't played them myself, so I wouldn't know. In brackets, but do you think either series could do with more of these? I know that the DS games onward do more gimmicky stuff, like examining 3D models, fingerprinting, stuff like that, but honestly, I'm not terribly looking forward to it. I like the court cases, talking to people, putting stories together from accounts. I don't like putting a vase together to see a bloodstain. So, not for me, should that be the case. Danganronpa, meanwhile, in Danganronpa 2, there is a section where you play a Death Room puzzle from, the Zero Escape series, and it's fine. It's just basically like, hey, look, you should be buying this series, while not saying that outright, but because it's Danganronpa and that's not the kind of puzzle they expect from you, there is a hint giver in the room to just solve all the puzzles for you, so... I think these games should stay focused on just, get evidence, deliver evidence. These extra methods of getting it aren't bad, but they're generally just, like, kind of washed down and not terribly interesting. Like, the original series, in Phoenix Wright's case, had, like, occasionally you were given a metal detector or a radio wave detector or something, and you just scanned an environment in very point-and-click fashion, and, it's fine. It's just an extension of the investigation stuff you were doing anyway, but... I'm not big on them, essentially. Akira Fujita. Do you prefer the dark tone of Danganronpa or the light-hearted tone of Phoenix Wright? Light-hearted by a country mile. There are times in a Phoenix Wright game where you just, you feel heroic. Danganronpa is a mad scramble to not die, and both of them are going for something different, and, I can buy into both at different times, but between the two of them, I had more fun with a light-hearted tone, solving mysteries, helping the people go free, getting the right criminal. It didn't feel as heavy. Which is the point. But, I still preferred it. Question 2. Would you ever consider doing the comparison videos again, or was this just an experimental idea? Kind of both. This was an experiment to see how it would work, but it also had a kind of practical purpose. I would do more. I don't feel a strict need to stick to a certain structure in playing videos. I try to meld my structure to suit whatever game I'm talking about. And essentially, in the last year, I played both series. I really liked both. I really wanted to make videos on both, but I couldn't think of a way to talk about them individually. And I thought, well, why not just put them together, kit bash them together, and just see what I can get. Also, I don't think kit bash is the correct term for that. I think that's the people who are into models and shit. Anyway, so this was a way I could do a video about either by doing a video about both. I only really have one idea for another comparison video right now, and that is Prototype and Infamous. That would be probably a lot more loose mind. they're both third-person action games, so they're at least in the same genre. You know, they both have elements of superpowers. One of them's a lot more heroic than the other one, optionally. One of them's a lot more edgy, but that's fun. Everyone likes a little bit of edge. 3. Precursors review is finally happening. Should I expect something terrible? I can't even answer this anymore. All I can say is sorry. God, I hate wine. Oh, sorry. 4. What are the plans for 2018? Do you have any idea where you want to go with this channel moving forward? I barely plan ahead. Obviously, the next video is Hunt Down the Freeman. That is a game that just stormed into our hearts. Just as soon as it arrived. I got a suggestion for a game called Hard Truck Apocalypse from a comment on the Precursors video, and that game has taken my interest. I love the title. Hard Truck Apocalypse. It puts a smile on my face just saying it, just thinking about it. Hard Truck Apocalypse. It's so silly. It's just 3 of the coolest fucking words in existence. Hard Truck Apocalypse. Heat Signature is another title, along with Mr. Shifty. Here's the problem I'm kind of having. Is Precursors was a very negative video. Hunt Down the Freeman is going to be an extremely negative video. Hard Truck Apocalypse isn't bad. Like, I played a bit of it, and it's janky, and it's the kind of thing I would cover. It's Euro jank, and it's good, but it's kind of thing. And I don't think it would be a negative video. No, I think it would be slightly positive. But I want to play a game that I really like after Hunt Down the Freeman, because I don't want to just, you know, start being negative nonstop. I want to, you know, sprinkle negativity around with positivity and shit. You know. So, Heat Signature and Mr. Shifty, both games I've been enjoying. Heat Signature would probably be quite a positive review, though I feel that game has flaws. Mr. Shifty, very much the same, good game with flaws. And I do want to do the tabletop RPG Blades in the Dark, and I've been posting about that on the Discord, as you've no doubt seen, like, you know, get some GMT folk together for a game and maybe do an American game as well, like EST or... So, I'm going to do a bunch of separate groups for that if I can, just do a couple of pickup games. If we have a lot of fun, maybe, like, keep doing an ongoing campaign if we do have fun with it. But I just want, for now, to run the game with different groups of people of different experience playing tabletop RPGs, different types of players, and just kind of see what responses I get. Maybe do a bit of a sampling, essentially, of different player types. Blades in the Dark is an interesting tabletop RPG. It'll be very different from Savage Worlds. Savage Worlds, I praised it for being very open-ended and, you know, for being a very good generic system, whereas Blades in the Dark is an ultra-focused narrative system. It's got a setting in mind, it's got mechanics to suit that setting, so we'll have a lot more of a concrete kind of RPG review rather than, well, here's why this game can do a lot of things very well. I got to, in this case, evaluate, does this game do this setting very well? And that'll be interesting. As for kind of meta-wise, the channel itself, I want to speed up video production, but I also don't want to compromise quality. And one thing that's kind of a problem with me is I work very slowly. Like, it takes me a little bit to get into a rhythm of working very hard. I work every day on the channel. Like, every day I put at least a few words into a script for the channel. But, like I said, every day it's a few words. It could be a paragraph. It's only really once I hit my rhythm that whole things start coming together. And when I start on a review, it takes the longest part of making any review is the opening, because openings mean so much to me. Openings are like, set the tone, and, you know, they might, I think I don't do them as well as I'd like to. It's like, how do I get people in to this? And, you know, the starting point is so hard because the first impression means so much. And I think I have a very solid idea for Hunt Down the Freeman, so it won't take as long. And I think it's a very unique place to start. I think it's a place that a lot of people haven't touched on. It's a very understated moment in a game that has a lot of moments that are so shit that none of it is understated. There's no... Hunt Down the Freeman has no understated bad, except from this moment. Oh god, I wish I saved that for the review itself, because I think that's a good way of putting it. Hunt Down the Freeman has no moments of bad that are understated, just a lot of in-your-face terribleness. But there's a moment in it that just kind of, it's so quiet, but it tells you the whole experience. It tells you every flaw it had. And it's really good. And I'm drunk. But me working slow is also a good thing, because it gives me a lot of time to think and reevaluate and come to a script with all my thoughts in some way together, and when I'm writing a script, I don't worry about chasing an odd idea I have because of that. It's like, I have so much time to think that if I think, hang on, that's interesting, I can run off in that direction. And also, no promises, but for the last couple of days, I have been thinking about remembering Beyond Two Souls, which is a very hard video to write because I don't remember Beyond Two Souls. But I thought of a joke that I really like, and that made me want to start writing. It's a very bad way to start. It's like, oh, I need an excuse for this one joke to happen, but that's how it is. As for, like, channel growth, I don't know. I don't know how to grow a channel. I want to get bigger, but I also don't want to be sleazy about doing it. I only do games I have a genuine interest in covering. If I was told a certain game would get me big, but I didn't find covering it enjoyable or any viewpoint that could be unique, it'd be a struggle. Like, Dead Rising 4 was a freak fluke, but it's a freak fluke I want to happen again, because that's a video I'm genuinely proud of, but it also blew up. I don't want to just, you know, make an easy video that was like, oh yeah, this would just get views in, but I wouldn't be happy with it. Essentially, want to get bigger, no idea how, so I'll just stay the course until maybe I figure something out. If the stars align, there'll be a game will have the same impact as Dead Rising 4, and I'll come to it organically rather than forcing it. So, I can't complain, really. Growth is consistent in my case. I wish it was faster, but I can't complain, because at least it's happening. I've been at this for a while now. I know how tricky it can be. Skeleton / DBZ King 119. Who are your favourite and least favourite characters of each series? 3. Who is your favourite character from each series? Merging these two questions together for obvious reasons. Favourite characters is tough, because there's a good few characters I like and dislike, so it's a bit of a grey area. So, favourite characters, Monokuma in Danganronpa 1 is legitimately threatening, entertaining, and fun. And just with each entry, he just gets worse as a character. He becomes a parody of himself. He knowingly becomes a parody of himself and the role of the mascot. And I don't like it. I don't care for it. So, moving on to survivors. Sakura from 1. She's just really cool. She's just a really likable character. I like the arc she has and how it plays out. In 2, it's Nagito. I believe it's Nagito. Fuck me. Nagito Komaeda. I think he's an interesting take on the Lucky character. He's maybe a bit too intelligent for his own good, but that comes with a caveat in that his intelligence and outlook on the world is incredibly warped and single-minded. From Danganronpa 3, Kokichi Oma. He's just the obvious pick for me. Like, I think my answers are quite milquetoast in this way. Kokichi is just... He's a believably shit liar. But he's also a really good liar, because he just lies for the sake of it. He just lies because he just lies. That's what he does. And in that way, he's the... Every Danganronpa survival group has the out-and-out antagonist. The character who's like, no, I'm not hanging out with the rest of the group. I don't give a shit about your ways of like, oh, we'll all just become friends so we won't kill each other. And in Danganronpa 1 and 2, they either have... you know, they're either brutally honest and direct, but they have clout, like, physically or mentally, to be straightforward about the death game. Like, one of them is ultra-intelligent, so, like, he can just say to all of them, yeah, this is a death game, it's a game, I will play it like a game and I'll have fun. And, you know, he's got enough, like, self-confidence and intelligence to get away with it. Whereas, in Danganronpa 2, the character is, like, physically threatening. Like, he could probably take most of the cast, even those who are much larger than him in a fight. Not to mention he has help from somebody. So, you know, they are threatening antagonist characters, but Kokichi Oma, no one likes him. And he's not physically intimidating. He's not particularly intelligent. He's bratty and tiny and just a little shit. He wasn't a threat by himself, but he was still a kind of imposing antagonist character because he was the absolute wild card. He seemed like really excited by the death game, and he's just fun to watch, essentially. He's fun, but he also just kind of works, and he's an interesting new take on the kind of antagonistic member of the death game. Least favourite would be, respectively, for each entry, a fat nerd, whose name I'm not even going to chance a guess at, 'cause I don't remember it. For Danganronpa 2, it's Teru Teru. I fucking hate that guy. And the Monokuma kids. All of them, as a single entity. I don't have much on the fat nerd. Like, he's just my least favourite character. You know, he's not... He's just kind of annoying. Teru Teru is the first character in the whole series where after one scene with him, I genuinely just wished he would die so I didn't have to fucking look at him. I just wanted him dead. I wanted him out of the death game early as possible. I mean, even with Fat Nerd, I didn't want him to die. I just liked him a lot less than everyone else. The Monokuma kids are the worst comic relief. Here's the thing with Danganronpa is Danganronpa is written in a very self-aware way. Danganronpa is like, Monokuma, well, I've got to be here. I'm the mascot. Well, we've got to have the ultimate question mark. We've got to have ultimate detective. Even though, I don't know, Danganronpa 2 didn't have ultimate detective, but you know, they knowingly do a lot of stuff. And it knows that the Danganronpa kids are very annoying. But it also devotes a lot of time to them. And it gives them a sub-story. And they are a piss take on mascots that Monokuma himself is also doing that thing. And they take up so much time with their bullshit. And occasionally the game tries to make them seem important, but it's really empty. I didn't much like Monomi from Danganronpa 2 either. But she is at least meaningful. She has a tangible, big impact on the story. And she's a foil to Monokuma. And that's, you know, she has a purpose to exist. Whereas the Monokuma kids are just shit. And I hate them. For Phoenix Wright, for characters I like, favourites. Edgeworth. I typically hate the snotty, stuck-up, faux British character. But I like Edgeworth. Edgeworth gets away with it. You know, he's decently flawed. Him and Phoenix do end up forming a really interesting dynamic between each other. I think Godot is the more interesting, fun prosecutor. And he has a good arc over the one game that he's in. He's really amusing. He's got a good gimmick. His music is fantastic. But we get to see Edgeworth kind of shift and change over the course of the 3 titles. And Godot is he's a lot more out there as a character. Not that that's a bad thing, but, you know, he's a character that only really works once, whereas Edgeworth kind of gets a bit of depth to him. Gets a bit more to work with. Least favourite. I really dislike Franziska Karma. She is just a one-note character. Her gag of whipping people in court when they annoy her is just irritating and overdone. And I think this is somewhat related to the whipping thing, but it's far less satisfying to trounce her in court. Whereas it's just more... Edgeworth and Godot, you feel like, oh, I've triumphed over those motherfuckers. Which is funny, because the game goes to extreme lengths to establish that Franziska is a legal prodigy. Like, she has been prosecuting cases since she was extremely young, like early teens, and she's 18 in the game and has more cases under her belt than Phoenix does in his mid-20s. And I guess it could just be that she is only 18. Yeah, sure, she's a prodigy, but she's only 18. She's getting beaten by a guy in his mid-20s. And the thing is that this is the second game, and by the second game, Phoenix Wright has won seemingly unwinnable cases. And Franziska tries so hard to top Phoenix and fails. She comes off as a tryhard, so whenever Phoenix beat her, it's like, yeah, you know, you tried so hard, but fuck it. Whereas Godot, meanwhile, is just, he's laid back and aloof, and he has a quiet kind of confidence in the way he acts. Like, even after Phoenix has beaten him several times, I buy into him just kind of like coming up and just, you know, oh, Phoenix tried. Yeah, this is the case where I really get you. Like, I buy it more from him, whereas with Karma, it's just very loud and brash. And later games where she isn't the primary prosecutor, it's a bit too little too late that they try and give her a bit more character. I feel it doesn't come in soon enough to make her interesting. And, fuck Wendy Oldbag, I hate her. And the problem is she was really popular in Japan, so she kept coming back. That's it. That is Ace Attorney and Danganronpa. I'd say join me next time for Precursors, but that's happened, so join me next time for Hunt Down the Freeman. I probably shouldn't get drunk for these, especially on wine. My goodness. Have a good night, everybody.